Hey fucks, Mad Mike here, and it is time for me to do what every single fucking metalhead is doing at this time of year. Give you my end of the year albums list. So I wasn't originally planning on doing this. One, because I don't really do contemporary reviews a whole lot. I think I've done like 3 in my entire life on YouTube. And 2, because I really just don't like doing end of the year lists like at all. However, over the past, 10 months or so, I've managed to build myself a very small but a very dedicated following to my channel, and some of these people really want to know what my favorite albums of the year are. And also there is a very small but very fucking loud minority who think that I only listen to fucking music from 30 fucking years ago. So I'm doing this list as a way to say thank you to my subscribers for caring so much about what I think, and I'm doing it as a giant middle finger to those fucking brain dead morons who think I'm stuck in the 80s. That being said, before I give that middle finger to them, I need to take this middle finger and point it towards my least favorite album of the year, and that is Ice Nine Kills with the Silver Cringe 2. I can't for the fucking life of me figure out what is so special about this stupid fucking band. Everything about this album screams desperate to me, like some 40-year-old who discovered his teenage son's Pierce the Veil albums and sang along to them thinking, I'm a cool dad now. There is not a single memorable riff on the album. The vocal performance sounds like the most desperate attempt to sound like Rhodey Walker ever and failing fucking miserably. And the lyrics, oh my god, the lyrics are country music levels of pandering. Oh my god, these people like horror. I like horror. It's like these musicians are speaking to me. Oh my god! All of this adds up to one of the biggest piles of cancer in the last 20 years. Fuck this album in the ass. I will never understand what is so fucking good about this band. Alright, and now moving on to my most disappointing albums. Iron Maiden's Senjutsu and Ginger's Wallflowers. Now, calling Senjutsu disappointing for me is kinda weird, especially since I didn't really have any expectations for it to begin with, but holy fuck, they did not meet any expectations I had. I do not find the album memorable in any way, the band sounds tired and old, and they really need someone in the studio to tell them not to write so many long fucking songs. You remember The Trooper? You remember how epic that song is? It's 4 minutes long. Do more things like that. Thank you. And my other disappointing album, as I've already said, is Ginger's Wallflowers. Now, I'm not really as disappointed in the album as I am disappointed in the band. You know, I used to think that Pisces blowing up was the best possible thing that could have happened to this band, but now I think it's the worst thing that's ever happened to this band, because they've pretty much become Pisces. It's like they let all of that circle jerking over that song get to their heads, and now they're more focused on being reaction bait than being actual songwriters at this point. Almost every song on this album feels like they're trying to do what Pisces did, and failing miserably. This kind of stuff is not what I personally want from Ginger, and that is why Wallflowers is my most disappointing album of the year. Alright, enough of the bad and disappointing bullshit. Let's get to some actual good albums that were released in 2021. How about we start with our honorable mentions? I know leaving this out of the top 10 is going to piss some people off, but it's my video. Deal with it. But anyways, I wasn't really expecting much out of this album because I am not a fan of Carcass. There is some stuff I like on Symphonies of Sickness and Heartwork, but besides that, I'm not really that interested in them. That being said, I enjoyed Torn Arteries a whole lot. Every song is a nice chunky slab of death metal, the vocal performance for a guy in his 50s is especially really good, and the guitar playing is pretty damn fucking strong. Funny story about this album, some bum in a fucking dark alley gave it to me after I blew him. So anyways, this is one of the more haunting albums of the year. There are some parts of the album that are genuinely terrifying, and I hope I never have to listen to it on acid. I found a copy of this album in a bathroom at a bathhouse. You see, I was cleaning myself up after a felching session and I saw a copy of it on the toilet. And I figured, what the hell, I'll take it home, give it a listen, and it turned out to be a very strong traditional metal album.
I am covered with the blood.
I've only listened to this album once. I can't possibly do it again because it's so hard to sit through, but in the best possible way. It is the most emotionally vulnerable album I've heard in a very, very long time. And when you consider what inspired this album to be made, it makes you look at it in a whole new light. Alright, time to be serious for a moment. Lingua ignota, I know you'll never see this video, but I want to say you have my full support. Being in abusive relationships myself, I just want to say you have done nothing wrong, and you are going to get through this. Stay strong. Thank you.
I think of every choice that I've ever made, and every road that led to
This album was actually introduced to me by a stripper after she gave me a fucking horrible lap dance. I was so disappointed and I wasn't gonna give her any money at all, but she decided to offer me a copy of this album in exchange for what, 20 bucks I think it was? But anyways, I got a copy of it and it's a pretty fucking cool death metal release. I look forward to what this band does next. So, funny story with this one, I was in a record store somewhere in Niagara Falls or Niagara on the Lake or wherever, and some big fat fuck who makes me look anorexic walks in, and he comes up to me and he says, "You need to listen to Turnstile. This album, Glow On, is really good." I was hearing what he said, but also I was getting really disgusted because the guy smelled like fucking shit. I'm not kidding you, the guy smelled like he hadn't wiped his fucking ass in 10 years. And I basically just noped out of whatever conversation he was trying to have with me and I went home. And then when I got home, I was thinking about the whole ordeal and I remember he said that I should listen to this Turnstile album. And I did. And it is probably the best hardcore, crossover, whatever the fuck album that I've heard this year. Thanks for the recommendation, you fucking stinky fat bastard. Power metal is a very top-heavy genre. There are like 3,000 of the same generic power metal garbage for every Unleash the Archers. That being said, when power metal is done right, holy fuck, it is the greatest thing you can ever hear. Warrior Path is one of those bands that can do it right, and the Mad King is a prime example of that. Alright, that's it for my honorable mentions. Moving on. Now before I get to my top 10 list, I just want to say one thing. I'm not really looking for originality or something that breaks the mold or anything like that. What I'm looking for above all else is execution and songwriting. So without further ado, let's get to my
Top 10 favorite albums of 2021.
It was released all the way back in July, and it seems now that it's all but been forgotten about. And I'm not sure why, because this is a very, very strong effort, especially from a supergroup. Everything about this album feels grandiose and epic. The instrumentation is very, very strong. There's bound to be at least one memorable riff on every track, especially on the title track. The vocal work is very strong, which is kind of funny because they sound a little bit like Deathclock, but somehow you're able to take it seriously on this album. If you like your metal to be grandiose and larger than life, this is the album for you. So I tried really hard to keep 30-year-old legacy acts out of my top 10 list, but I just couldn't do that in this case because this album goes fucking hard. It's amazing that all these guys are in their 50s now, and yet they still haven't lost that brutal edge that they had 30 years ago. Every track on this album smashes you in the face with a hammer, stabs you in the crotch, and throws you into a giant deep fryer for you to boil to death. Cannibal Corpse is truly an anomaly because they have essentially released the same album for 30 years, and somehow they still manage to stay fresh and exciting. Remember at the beginning of this list when I said I wasn't looking for originality? Well, this album is a perfect example of why. This is nothing we haven't heard before. It's the same traditional thrash metal we've been hearing for the past 40 years. So why is it on my list? Because everything is executed so well and the songs kick massive amounts of ass. This band knows when to make you headbang until your neck falls off and when to make you open a fucking pit up and mosh like you've never moshed before. Enforced managed to give us one of the best thrash metal albums of the last 10 years. And just like Kill Grid, this album features absolutely nothing we haven't heard before in the last 40 years, but it's executed so well and the songs are so fucking killer that you really don't give a shit. The music is straightforward and in your face, the vocals harken back to classic metal singers like Blackie Lawless and Kronos, and even the production of this album harkens back to that classic trad metal style. Moving on to number 6 now, and this might be my most controversial pick of the list so far, not because of the album, but because where the album is situated on the list. And that album is... So I know this is gonna piss a lot of people off, but I can only give my honest opinion right now. At one point this year, this album was actually number 1 on the list.
However,
This album seems to get worse for me every time I listen to it. That being said, there's still a lot about this album that I love, and that's why it's still on the list. I mean, the fact that they were able to write a sequel to arguably the most revered prog metal album of the last 20 years and have it not be a complete letdown is impressive in and of itself. Of course, we know the musicianship is awesome and the vocal work is fantastic and the songs are so good that they manage to keep your attention even when they're 15 minutes long, but what I really want to touch on for this album is the production. Jamie King knows how to produce a fucking kick-ass sounding metal album. Every instrument and every vocal line sounds crystal fucking clear, and the drums pack such a huge punch to them that every single quarter note hits me right in the chest. And of course, like I already said, the songs are fucking killer. I know putting this record at number 6 is gonna piss a lot of people off, but it's my list, deal with it. Now, while this album doesn't rank number 1 for my favorite album of the year, it definitely ranks number 1 on my weirdest albums of the year list, as DSO came back this year with their own brand of avant-garde swing prog symphonic.
ah, fuck it.
Salsa gets all the girls to dance and make them take off their underpants metal. That's the subgenre they are now. Accept it. But in all seriousness, this album blends a whole bunch of different genres together like metal, rock, swing, salsa, prog, classical, and somehow the final result wasn't a disjointed mess. They're able to harness all of that talent and channel it into some pretty fucking cool songs on this album. Pretty much every track on the album stands out from the others, whether it's an upbeat rocker like War Painted Valentine, a catchy dance number like Speed Dating an Arsonist, the moody, progressive sounding Celebremos lo Inevitable. This band's songwriting ability is just as versatile as the music itself, and it shows on this record in spades.
Hold up, don't look over your shoulder. Just keep your composure.
Alright, I know this is my most controversial pick on the list, but before you all lose your collective shit on the now non-existent dislike bar or the comments section, please hear me out. The reason this album is not only on my list, but in my top 5 is because I have never heard modern pop metal done so seamlessly before. And of course, as I've said a million times in this video already, I favor songwriting and execution over everything else, and this album is incredible in that regard. This album knows exactly which riff to give you at the right time, which vocal line goes perfectly with that riff. It knows when to give you a breakdown, a bridge, a verse, a chorus, and each song knows exactly how to draw you in. And above all else, this album is entertaining as fuck. I've listened to this album I don't know how many times now, and I can safely say I am never bored throughout the entire runtime. And while the entire band brings their A game here, Sky Sweetenham stands out from the entire group, both on vocals and lyrics. Her bubblegum sounding voice might be a turnoff for most metalheads, words, but I think it fits perfectly for what's going on here. Her lyrics on this album are actually very deep and well written. No Surrender, for example, is a very well written song about facing your own fears. Bystander, despite its very upbeat nature, is actually a very deep hitting song about the fear of letting life pass you by. And the track Bad News is actually a very cautionary tale about how dangerous and addictive mass media can be. So yeah, if you like fun, entertaining, well executed pop metal that's much deeper than you think, this is the album for you. Full disclosure here, technical death metal really isn't my thing. That being said, sometimes tech death can absolutely blow me away, and this relentless slab of Vancouver brutality absolutely did. And why did it blow me away, folks? Because, take another drink, the songwriting was fucking killer. Despite how technical this band can be, every song has hooks, every song has melodies, and the best part about it, it doesn't waste a single second. This album only has 8 songs, it's 31 minutes long in total, it just shows up, kicks your fucking ass, and leaves you wanting more. I can go on and on about how great the musicianship is on this record, but all I really want to talk about here is the vocal performance. Ole Peters absolutely fucking crushed it. This album features some of the best gutturals I have heard in a long time, and what makes him stand out the most is how fast he can sing. This guy is a fucking human minigun. The fucking dude was spitting out 16th note triplet bars at God knows how many beats per minute, and he made it fucking look easy. Season of Mist needs to get this guy a fruit basket and half a meatball sub for his performance. It was so fucking good. I absolutely love this album, and I look forward to whatever this band does in the future. My absolute favorite death metal album of the year, and for damn good reasons. First off, this is the angriest album I've heard in a very long time. The whole album is one big, focused attack on organized religion. There's also a very evil presence lurking throughout the whole album. And I'm not talking about the evil of Hail Satan, burn church, yay! The evil on this album is represented by Christianity itself. And the reason this album sounds so angry is because of all the anger directed at this evil presence. Lyrical themes aside, this record would mean nothing if the songs didn't kick absolute fucking ass, and they absolutely do. Despite the lyrical theme being similar throughout, every song sort of works as its own entity. This was Aeon's first album in 9 years, and they showed absolutely no signs of rust at all. Way to fucking go, Aeon. And now, Mad Mike's #1 album of 2021 is... You guys want to know something interesting? When I first heard this record, I didn't even think it would be on my top 10 list, let alone #1. I wasn't even that big on this album when I first heard it. But I kept listening to it throughout the year, and holy fuck, this album grew on me so fucking hard. It got so good for me that it managed to reach the #1 spot. There is absolutely not a single thing I don't like about this album. Every aspect of this album, from the songwriting to the musicianship to the execution to the production to the vocals, all fits together so well. I love this album's use of keyboards. I love its use of distorted vocals. I love how every single song has its own feel, its own rhythm, its own identity. I love how heavy it is. I love how melodic it is. I love how eerie it sounds. Now, I know I said at the beginning of this countdown that I tend to prefer things like songwriting and execution over things like originality and, say, experimentation, but just because I don't prefer originality or experimentation over those other things doesn't mean I don't welcome it. I welcome it on this album because it is executed to fucking perfection. No matter how weird or how off the rails this album gets, the songwriting doesn't suffer at all. I can safely say that each song, from Become the Night to The Chemist, sticks out in my head in one way or another. The presentation of the music feels vulnerable, personally honest, and above all else, uncompromising. The Lion's Daughter made a record that can only get better the more you revisit it. Skin Show is absolutely, positively my favorite of the year, and who knows where it might end up on my top 10 of the decade list when 2030 rolls around. So that's my list, everyone. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I know a lot of you people disagree. Jesus fucking Christ, Mike. I can't believe you have BT Bam at #6. I'm done with you. I'm unsubscribing.
Oh no. Anyway.
I hope you enjoyed my list, but before I go, I have to give a whole bunch of shout-outs to a whole bunch of people because I would feel like a total fucking jackass if I didn't. First of all, I want to thank a couple of fellow YouTubers in the metal YouTube community, that being Metal Trenches, Metal Meltdown, Forge Master, Quest for Metal, and Pair of Jeans. The reason why I want to thank these guys so much is because, for reasons I won't get into, I kind of fell off the metal scene about 7 years ago-ish, and through watching these guys' videos, I've been able to get my ear back to the fucking ground on what's going on in modern metal, and thanks to the music I've discovered, I can't thank these guys enough for helping me every fucking opportunity they can. Like, you guys, it means way more to me than you can possibly imagine, so thank you so much. And second of all, I want to thank all of my subscribers for following my work and loving the shit out of it. All I can do is just keep doing what I'm doing, and you guys are helping me do that, so thank you so fucking much. And yeah, so that's my list, folks. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you very much for tuning in. Bye, fucks.
You think I'm too old for this shit? You think I'm too old for this shit?